Hey, good morning, folks. We're going to give the meeting about half a minute to a minute to get going. We're right at 8 o'clock. You all are the early arrivers. Thank you. We'll let a handful of others come in and then we'll get started. So if you need to top off your coffee, cup of tea, or maybe you start with the Diet Coke, go do that right now. We'll start in about a minute. I'm seeing a lot of friendly names on the screen today. So good to have you all, and a few that I don't know. Plus, what do I think I count? Three AI transcription tools already. See how many end up in here. The event will be transcribed many times. All right, hey, we are at 8:01. We'll get going. I know a handful of others will be joining. And for those who don't make it, or even those who do, the event is being recorded. Microsoft will do its transcription, and everyone who's registered, you'll get automatically after a recording and the transcription of the event. So don't worry, you don't have to ask for it, it'll just arrive. But hey, good morning, everyone, or good afternoon to those of you who I can tell are overseas right now. My name is Frank Jaskulke. I'm the VP of Sales and Business Development at AVO MedTech, a small consulting group built by and for serial medical device entrepreneurs. Really appreciate you taking a little bit of time to join us today. We have a conversation that I am personally very excited about. Uh, Nirav and I were talking just before this that quite often my observation is startup entrepreneurs focus a lot on the technical, the quantitative, the things seemingly in your control, your FDA and R&D work, you're going out and fundraising, and we don't talk a lot about leadership in a startup and how different it is from leadership at a large, established, probably revenue producing and well-financed organization. And that's what we're going to talk about today. Some of the unique challenges that people like you, including you, face. And that's why I'm going to stop talking and hand it over to our wonderful speaker today and let him take you through the rest of this program. Uh, One last thing, we have the Q&A function as chat. So if you have questions, pop them into the chat. I'll be watching it, make sure things get pulled up, and we'll have a transcript of that at the end as well. So if you got questions, comments, just throw it in that. It helps to avoid some of the challenges of you're accidentally off mute and you don't know it and you say something you maybe didn't want the whole crowd to hear. And with that, Nirav, I'll hand it over to you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Frank. And good morning, good afternoon, good evening, based on where you are. Wonderful to be here with you and wonderful to have you here. And just excited to keep it engaging and interactive. So feel free to ask questions by chat. I'll be happy to answer them as they come up. And I'm going to start sharing my screen. All right. So topic today, as Frank mentioned, leadership skills for MedTech founders and CEOs. So a quick introduction about myself. So I'm a founder president of Stratosphere. So I do leadership coaching, team coaching, also do leadership offsites, workshops, keynote speeches, and also do a business growth consulting, helping small businesses and medical device businesses grow. Okay, so I have 25 years experience in the medical device industry, primarily at Medtronic. I was there for 23 years. Started off as an engineer, MS in biomedical engineering, and then moved on to different roles in strategy, business development, global marketing, program management, and R&D. So my last role was at a company called Smiths Medical, which is now part of ICU Medical, as the general manager for their critical care business. So that was my last corporate role before I kicked off Stratosphere. I also serve on the board of two different nonprofits and also practice and teach meditation as a volunteer. So if any of you are interested in learning meditation, it's all free, open to all. Send me a note, all right? And so here's a summary of companies I've worked with as Stratosphere. So you can see it's not just healthcare companies across the board, across industries, small companies, large companies, for-profit, non-profit. Now you might wonder, yeah, well, I thought we're talking about medical devices. Haven't you worked with MedTech founders and CEOs? And the answer is yes, I worked with quite a few of them. It's just that these are lists of corporations I worked with when the corporation's paying for my services. MedTech founders and CEOs typically are going to pay from their own pockets. And so that's a whole different list of individuals I worked with, including MedTech founders and CEOs, where they are always morally and principle oriented, and they don't want to spend the scant resources of the company on leadership coaching. So it's always paid from their pocket. So that's why they don't show up here. Okay. So with that, let's get started with you. Today is all about you and your leadership skills as MedTech founders and CEOs. So first thing I'd like you to think about is your top performance goal for 2025. Think about what your fiscal year, whatever your fiscal year is. Is it end of the year? Is it April? Whatever it is for this fiscal year for you. What is your top performance goal? Because my goal is to make this personal for you, valuable for you, not just a theoretical talk, but let's make it real for you in terms of your specific goal and your specific leadership challenges. Okay, so hopefully you thought about your top goal. The next thing is, what is your biggest challenge in achieving that goal? What could be your biggest challenge in achieving that goal? Now, if it's easy and no challenge, that's fine, that's great. But if not, what could that challenge be? All right, and then what leadership skill would you need to sharpen to achieve this goal? What leadership skill do you need to sharpen to achieve this goal? Now, again, if you feel like you have the top leadership skill for this goal, think about your next challenge. What is the second most important leadership skill, which would be important to achieve that goal? And what would that be so you can sharpen that? So what I would love for you to do is put in the chat what you came up with, because that makes it real, right? So then let's keep it interactive. So what is your top leadership skill you would like to sharpen to achieve your goal? And Frank, I don't know if you're able to read some of them or not, but that'd be cool.
Yeah.
Nobody typing anything?
Yeah, give them a minute.
All
We
right.
got first one. Hang on. Simon put, oh, now they're coming in fast. Simon had put in his top leadership skill is to engage successfully with investors.
Yeah.
Dory said balancing priorities, working in the business and on the business. I feel that one. Carl said onboarding new sales leader to hit 2025 performance. And Elena said resilience in a difficult fundraising environment.
Yeah. Wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. And again, if you want to keep it personal, that's fine, completely understandable. But I'm sure as long as you have it written down for yourself, that way we make this valuable for you, right? So even if you don't want to share in the chat, please keep that written in front of you as your top goal, which will help you with your performance for your company this year. Motivate and energize your partners. Motivate leadership team to achieve design freeze. Hit our sales target. Learning the big business fast enough to make an impact on the same year. Better prioritization, delegation, hitting sales targets, producing quality product. Excellent. Great. So that gives us some ideas, right? I mean, right here, you know better than I in terms of what the leadership skill is required. That's why I want to make sure you have a chance to think about this. And then my goal is to help you achieve that, right? So let's start sharing again. Continue. All right. So now that you have an idea of a specific skill you'd like to work on, here are some examples which I've experienced, and some of you have already shared that. Raising capital. that's a very common need or challenge, right? I mean, just a constant need to raise money, and here all kinds of examples I'm sharing here with you in terms of quotes applying to that. So that's one skill or one challenge which you raised as well. Second is dealing with uncertainty, right? That's lots and lots of things going on: clinical, regulatory, investor, political. Right now, it's a difficult climate right now for fundraising, so that's also going to be a factor. When to pivot versus persevere. Okay, a third example, and again, some of you mentioned this already. Thank you for that. Forming an engaged team, getting the right people on a limited budget, delegating, right? You said that yourself. I still feel like I have to do everything myself, and getting alignment across a hybrid or cross-functional team. Then here's an example of also mentioned by you, balancing strategy and execution, being in the business versus on the business, right? Staying out of the weeds, but still keeping the quality high, trying to be strategic when I'm putting out fires all day. How do I lead when I'm also the technical expert? That could be happening sometimes too. And then, very common experience across CEOs for founders, managing pressure and burnout, right? Always having to be on, game face on, pressure on, roller coaster going up and down all the time, trying to stay calm when everything feels urgent or going crazy, right? So hopefully between these lists, we see some commonality between what you mentioned, which I think we did, and then also whatever you have, again, is most important. So please keep that front and center, whatever you come up with, and we'll make sure we address that. So, like I said, our goal today is to sharpen your leadership skill to achieve your performance goal in 2025. So what if all these examples we mentioned, these challenges, the skills we talked about, could be sharpened by working on just one thing? Is that possible? I'm going to hypothesize for you today that yes, it is. Okay? And so if you can have one thing you work on, because all of us can't work on all these things and still find time to run the business, right? So how can we be efficient to help our leadership challenges and skills in many ways at once? I said one thing. So with that, I'm going to share a little story of the two wolves. Some of you may have heard this. So this is the grandfather. He's talking to his grandson, and he says, in my head, there's a very fierce battle between two wolves. So one of the wolves is all anger and fear and jealousy and frustration and shame and guilt and ego, right? And the other wolf is just joy and passion and purpose and compassion and love, creativity, innovation, purpose. And it's a very fierce battle. And the same battle is going on in your head and in everybody else's head in the world. So the grandchild thinks for a second, so which wolf will win? And the grandfather simply says, the one you feed. The one you feed. So which wolf are you feeding every day in our heads? But that's the one in charge, and that's the one dictating our performance, our well-being, our relationships. So that simple story is very powerful to illustrate the main content I'm going to share with you today around how you can improve all your leadership skills. Okay, so the key to all of this is our mindset. Oops, so let's see, share screen again. So, there's two sides of our brain. Our mind can be our best friend. It can also be our worst enemy, right? The two wolves. So it's constantly sabotaging our performance and happiness. All our negative emotions, including stress, are the result of self-sabotage, the negative wolf. And so what has been found over the last decade through research that you can actually strengthen the part of the brain that serves you, your positive wolf, and quiet or weaken the part that sabotages you, your negatives. So you handle leadership challenges with a more positive mindset and less stress. So you perform better as a leader and your relationships improve. So here are the two wolves in our head. We call them your saboteurs because they sabotage us, and your sage, which is your true higher brain. Okay. The saboteurs and the sage are the two wolves in our head. The saboteurs are mainly in your brain stem, your limbic system, parts of the left brain, and the sage is in your higher middle prefrontal cortex. Your empathy circuitry is part of that, and that's mainly in your right brain. So if you're saboteur driven, it's motivating you through negative emotions, fear, stress, anger, guilt, shame, insecurity. If you're sage driven, it's motivating you through positive emotions, empathy, curiosity, joy, passion, purpose, creativity. So saboteur-driven performance might generate success, maybe short-term success, but not happiness. Sage-driven performance generates your highest success and sustained happiness. So hopefully you'll agree with me when I say it's better to be led by your sage than your saboteurs. Right? So that's the key, is how do we lead from our sage more? So I'm going to dive a little deeper now. Again, this is all based on research in positive psychology, neuroscience, cognitive psychology, and performance science, right? And with 500,000 participants from 50 countries. So this is not just based on theoretical stuff. This is based on foundational research with a lot of people around the world. There was a whole book released a few years ago called Positive Intelligence, where all the research was summarized. And all these concepts I'm sharing with you are based on that research. Okay, so let's talk about each of them one by one. The saboteurs. So the number one saboteur we all have is we call the judge. That's a universal saboteur affecting us. So that's the one beating you up repeatedly over past mistakes, warning you obsessively about future risks, waking up in the middle of the night worrying and not able to go back to sleep again, getting you fixated on what's wrong with others or yourself. So that's your greatest internal enemy. And it activates your other saboteurs. They call them your accomplice saboteurs, which hijack us. Okay. So that's the other reason why judge is so bad for us, because it also is a ringleader grabbing all the other saboteurs. So much of your stress and happiness and negative impact on performance is a direct result of your judge reducing your effectiveness as a leader. And the way it operates, it judges yourself, or judges others, or judges circumstances. It'll find some way to bring you down with any of these three areas. And then we have these cast of 9 characters in our head, okay? 9 of them, we call them the accomplice saboteurs, which together with the judge create that negative emotion in our head and impact our performance. So let's dive a little deeper into each of these. But you have the controller, the hyperachiever, the restless, stickler, pleaser, hypervigilant, avoider, victim, and hyper-rational. So most of them are self-explanatory, what they could be meaning and how they can bring you down. But let's just dive a little deeper there. For each of them, controller, anxiety-based need to take charges and control situations and people's actions, right? High anxiety and impatience not possible. Hyperachiever, depending on constant achievement for self-respect and self-validation. Highly focused on external success. Restless, constantly searching for their next exciting thing, getting bored very quickly with the current activity or task, rarely at peace. Stickler, perfectionism and a need for order and organization taken too far. Pleaser, always trying to gain acceptance, affection by helping, pleasing, flattering others, losing sight of your own needs and becoming resentful, especially when people don't reciprocate for all the wonderful things you've done to help them, right? Hypervigilant. When's the next sky gonna fall, shoe gonna drop, just constantly worried about what can go wrong. Vigilance that never rests. And then avoider, avoiding difficult tasks or conflicts, focusing only on the positive, easy, pleasant things and conversations. Victim, emotional, temperamental, focusing on negative, painful feelings as a way to gain affection and attention. And last but not least, hyper-rational, intense, exclusive focus on data and logic, including for relationships. So can be perceived as cold or distant or intellectually arrogant. So there you go. There's a cast of 9 characters with the judge, 10 together, which create those negative emotions and impact our performance. So what I would love for you to do is think about what could be your top saboteurs. I'm sure you know, based on this list I went through, mine are hyperachiever and pleaser, for example. Okay, those are the top 2 saboteurs I have. And they definitely affect my performance. So what could be your top 2 saboteurs? I want to think about that. And how could they be affecting your performance goal for 2025? So again, think through this list here. Think about which of these may be your dominant ones. And how could they be affecting your performance goal or negatively impacting that leadership skill you want to focus on, right? How does it affect that one? And therefore affect our performance goal. Anybody wants to share your top saboteurs? Or like I said, keep it personal, that's fine too. I shared mine. So Gary says pleaser and avoider. Yes, those two are very well teamed up together for sure. Avoider and pleaser again. Yes. Restless and pleaser. Stickler, pleaser. Struggling with difficult conversations. Yes. Yeah, a lot of CEOs could be on ADHD and exhibit many traits, right? And how do we enhance them as superpower? Thank you. Great point. All of the above except victim. Okay. Judge is spot on for me. Restless, pleaser. Pleaser. So hopefully you have some sense. This is part of that self-awareness, right? Of what's bringing you down. Because one part of the journey here is to just be aware of them and don't allow them to bring you down. Because your true nature is sage, which we'll talk about next. Okay. So just getting these saboteurs out of the way will make you a much better leader already. That's the beauty of all this work. Okay, so let's move on to the other part of the equation, the sage. This, as I mentioned, lives in the higher brain, in the brain associated with positive emotions. So this is including 5 specific sage powers we're going to talk about here. So first is wisdom, purpose, big picture thinking. We call it the navigate power. That's part of the sage. Love, compassion, that's your empathize power. Curiosity, that comes from your sage. That's your explore power. Creativity, which is your innovate power. And then last but not least, activate power, laser focus, execution, and action. Just think about these 5 powers: navigate, empathize, explore, innovate, activate. How powerful would these be if you bring more of these into your leadership Additionally, when you're more in the sage mode, you release endorphins versus the cortisol coming from your saboteurs. So that counters the negative impact of cortisol, and feelings of joy, happiness, peace, they all come from your sage. Okay. And then last but not least, another quality of the sage is it operates from the sage perspective. So what is the sage perspective? That every situation in life is a gift and opportunity. Every situation in life is a gift and opportunity. Think about that, right? That seems like almost like an impossible statement, but there's embedded in here multiple words chosen carefully. Gift meaning you already see it or accept it as a gift, a positive. Opportunity means you convert it into a gift. So one is passive, one is active. But either way, you make a positive outcome from any situation. I'd like to share a story about the sage perspective, which I found really powerful to illustrate this notion, because I'm sure many of you are going, that's not possible. How can every situation be a gift and opportunity, right? So this is from the African tradition. There was a king who used to love going hunting, okay? And he had this friend who was also responsible for maintaining the equipment, who would go with him. So one day they're out hunting and the king is about to shoot a gun and the gun blows up in his hand. So he's bleeding profusely, his thumb is gone, and he's in pain, and he yelled at his friend, "What happened here?" And the friend calmly says, "Everything in life is a gifted opportunity." The king gets really mad at him. "What the hell do you mean? You didn't do your job. My thumb is gone. I'm bleeding here. That's all you have to say?" And again, the friend calmly says, "Everything in life is a gift and opportunity." So the king gets really mad at him and throws him in jail for saying all this stuff and not doing his job. So guess what the friend says when he puts him in jail? Everything in life is a gift and opportunity. So king just shakes his head, thinks this guy has lost his marbles, right? Leaves him in jail and goes back to his palace. So now a couple of years go by. Okay, he's out hunting again, and he gets caught by all these tribal people in the jungle. He finds himself tied to a tree. This huge pot of water is boiling next to him. They're doing the sacrificial dance around it, and he realizes about to be sacrificed. So he gets really scared for his life. He's sweating bullets and bleeding, praying to all the high powers that be to save his life. And right before the big dunk is supposed to happen, one of the guys comes to him and says, "Hey, we just need to make sure you're fit for the sacrifice. A quality check," right? So he inspects him from top to bottom. He says, "Uh-oh, I'm sorry, you failed the test. You're missing a thumb. We need somebody with all the body parts for the sacrifice." So they let him go. So the king heaves a huge sigh of relief and like, wow, that was close. And then he remembers his friend and what he had said. And that he was right. That because he lost his thumb that day, his life got saved today, right? So it was a gift for him. So now he feels really bad about putting his friend in jail. So he runs to his friend, tells him the whole story. And again, the friend calmly says, everything in life is a gift and opportunity. So the king says, "But aren't you mad at me for putting you in jail all this time? Then maybe I should have given you a kingdom or something for that gift you gave me," right? So the friend says, "Okay, let me explain this to you. Let's say you had not put me in jail. Then I would be out hunting with you. We would both have been caught. You would have failed the test, but I would have passed the test," right? So everything in life is a gift and opportunity. Again, a funny story, but a powerful story to illustrate the sage perspective that, sometimes we don't know what's good for us and why things are happening, but we can make every situation into a positive. Okay, so hopefully that story illustrates the sage perspective, which is every situation in life is a gift and opportunity. Okay, so now if you think about all these sage powers, let's think about how they affect leadership. So each of these powers translates to some amazing leadership skills. So navigate power. So that translates to strategic thinking, creating a vision, inspiring and motivating your team, right? Second, empathize power. That leads to more self-awareness, self-confidence, trust, better relationships, more empathy and love for others. Those are great leadership skills, right? Explore power leads to curiosity, seeking to understand, open to others' ideas, listening skills, seeing the possibilities. Again, incredible leadership skills to have just from that one power. Innovate power. Well, that's what we focus on here in MedTech, right? Creativity, collaboration, better idea generation, out-of-the-box thinking. Innovation is key to what we do. And then activate power. Laser-focused execution, performance, results. We call the flow state, right? Being in flow mode, getting things done. That's what happens in the activate power. So again, each of these sage powers leads to incredible leadership skills. And then, of course, the sage perspective we talked about, that leads to a positive mindset, never giving up, more resilience during challenging times, patience, and perseverance. So now, what I would love for you to do is think about if you're more sage-driven, just a little bit more, how would it sharpen your desired leadership skill? So whatever skill you put down at the beginning of our conversation today, does being more in sage mode help you achieve that skill or sharpen it a little bit more? And again, I'll keep these sage powers in front of you so you can think about that. So we have navigate, empathize, explore, innovate, activate, and the sage perspective. Those are the 6 qualities which come out when you're in sage mode. So how would that affect and sharpen your desired leadership skill? Again, if you want to put in the chat, yes or no, just to say, hey, did it help or not help? Okay. So hopefully you're seeing that link between your chosen leadership skill and how being in Sage is going to help you grow that skill. All right. So again, even thinking about each of the skills we talked about, which again, many of you have described, let's just go through each of them we talked about at the beginning and say, how does the Sage mode affect it? So raising capital, right? Really common challenge. How would these Sage powers help you with that? Right? So here are the Sage powers again. Navigate, empathize, explore, innovate, activate, Sage perspective. How would these help you with raising capital? Well, the empathize power is going to help you relate much better with your investors, right? Because you'll realize in sage mode, it's better, more important to build a relationship versus the stress of selling, selling, selling. So that all comes with the empathize power. The other important thing is going to be creating a vision and giving a vision versus just focusing on the technical aspects and the product features. That vision is going to come with your navigate power. Okay. And then being calm and composed during the conversations and truly listen to them to truly understand their pain points and how you can address them versus, again, trying to pitch and sell to them all the time. That's going to help you with, that's your explore power. So each of these powers will directly help you in your investor relationships and partnerships and raising capital because you'll be just empathetic, visionary, and listening to their pain points so that you can address them when you talk about your product and features. So this one example of how the sage powers can affect your chosen leadership skill. Okay. Then let's talk about the other one we talked about here, dealing with uncertainty, constant uncertainty. How will your sage powers help with that? Again, your navigate power, that's going to give you the big picture thinking, the purpose, helping you stay rooted in what's most important in the mission and your passion and purpose you already have, which is why you are CEOs and founders for MedTech, right? It's because of that passion and purpose you have and the drive. That's going to help you deal with uncertainty, the navigate power. The activate power is all about laser focused execution and decisions. That's going to help you during uncertainty, making the right decisions using your navigate power and then activate power. Again, exploration will help you get the right data during uncertainty. Innovation will help you come up with different ideas and solutions to deal with uncertainty. So each and every power is helping you with deal with uncertainty, right? Forming and engaging your team. All these sage powers are going to help you there again. Inspiring and motivating your team. That's going to be critical with the navigate power, right? Getting your team to execute better. That's your activate power. Delegating, that's going to be coming from your empathize power, empathy for yourself, that, hey, that you can't do everything by yourself, right? A lot of us don't have empathy for ourselves. That's our judge for ourselves coming in the way. And so the empathize power, together with the big picture thinking, is going to help you delegate more. So again, you can see how each and every sage power directly impacts each of these skills you want to improve and focus on. So balancing strategy and execution, well, that's a definition of your navigate power and the activate power. Balancing the two, that's your discernment coming from your sage. That's a direct example of how these two powers help you. And the balance comes from your sage as well, okay? And then finally, managing pressure and burnout. Again, empathize power. Knowing that it's better to put a mask on yourself first before putting the mask on others, right? That you'll do better as a leader if you take time out for yourself. Together with the delegation, prioritization, all of those powers are going to help you with that, which is going to help you manage the pressure and the burnout. Staying calm, being in sage mode will help you stay calm. So hopefully you're seeing the link between all these leadership skills and being in sage mode. So as I mentioned in the beginning, what if all the leadership skills could be sharpened by working on just one thing? Well, the answer is your mindset, right? That's the secret. So shifting your mindset will transcend your leadership. Not just transform, not just tweak, it'll transcend it because all these sage powers will take your leadership to a whole new level. It's amazing how a small shift in the mindset takes your leadership to a whole new level. And I've seen that consistently in all my clients. I worked with over 100 clients now, okay, using this framework, and it works all the time. As long as you're putting in some time and effort, you'll see a huge shift happening in your leadership. So our mantra for today, if there's one thing you take away from today, is be the sage, right? Be in sage mode. That's the secret to achieving your leadership skill and achieving your performance goal 2025. So this stuff, I want to have some time for Q&A. So some next steps, you can actually, there's some free resources I have for you. One is a saboteur assessment. So it'll actually tell you your top saboteurs and rank them from most dominant to least dominant. Just 5-minute survey, okay? Another survey is your sage strength. What they found was actually from 0 to 100, it'll give you a number. Let's say you get 60. That's your sage strength, which means 60% of the time you're in sage mode, 40% of the time you're in saboteur mode. So we can do an assessment in 5 to 6 minutes. It'll tell you what is your sage strength. That gives you a baseline to say, hey, where am I at? And what they found in the research was you're to be 75% or above to be thriving in your life and be totally thriving as a leader. 75 and above out of 100. Otherwise, we are just surviving. Okay, just surviving. So how do we shift our mindset and create the sage to be more and more powerful more of the time? That's the key to taking a leadership to a whole new level. Okay, so I'd be happy to send you a link for that assessment, and there'll be something you can learn more about. Another thing we want to do is just create a MedTech founder community where we have these kind of events. Today is an example of that, but just discussing different topics which help you. It's all free. And just to have a community, a safe space, a place to learn and grow together and connect with other CEOs and founders like you. If you're interested in joining something like that, let me know. Send me a note. And then if you want to dive even deeper into shifting from saboteur to sage, sharpening your leadership skills, achieving your goals, we do have a sage leadership program from Stratosphere. That's essentially based on the fact that 20% is insight, but truly what makes the positive happen is your mental muscle development, right? And so that's why we've all been through programs and talks where we have got these major ahas. Wow, that's great. But then a few weeks later, nothing happens. No, nothing. It's gathering dust on our desks, right? Because we didn't work on the mental muscle development, the habit formation. So 80% is all based on the mental muscle work. 20% is insight. So this takes some time and effort for building powerful habits. Most attempts fail because we stop at the inside and don't build the habits. We need sustained change, sustained effort, just for a little bit of time and effort for a few weeks, few months, to lay down these neural pathways in our heads to form new habits through consistent daily practice. So the notion called neuroplasticity, that's a scientific property of our neural muscles, our brain. Just like you can build your biceps and triceps over a few weeks, few months, you can build your neural muscles, your sage, using the property of neuroplasticity. As you can see, we have these neurons which are going in a certain way from our childhood, like going down the left. So negative thought patterns keep happening, same situation, same triggering, same pathways. However, at every point there at the synapse, you have multiple options available. So if you're able to make it shift and go to the other side by doing some activity and then keeping that practice going so that becomes your norm again, your new habit, that's how we shift our habits and shift our mindset using neuroplasticity. That's your key to shifting our balance of power from saboteur to sage. So we have examples of sage reps, just like you have reps for your biceps and triceps, you have reps for your sage muscle development. And that's something we can do to help us focus on and grow our sage. So all these are part of that sage leadership program, which is all about be the sage, helping you grow your sage and grow your leadership. Okay, so that's the focus of the sage leadership program. It's such a program with a trained coach. You can dramatically increase your likelihood of success to shift your leadership. So here are all the different things part of that program, which are going to help you grow your sage and shift from saboteur to sage. And here are all the skills we would work on as part of that, which again, as you mentioned, your skills, many of these were tied to these areas, right? Self-awareness, self-confidence, strategic thinking, empathy, creativity, execution, team leadership, stress management, conflict management, plus much more. Okay. So with that, again, shift your mindset and transcend your leadership and be the sage. So with that, I just want to leave it open for you for some questions. I want to leave 15 minutes, right on time. And here's my contact information if you want to get in touch with me for any of those follow-up actions. So I'd love to hear from you in the chat if you have any questions for me. Thank you, Dory. Thank you, Mark. To Andrew. Looks like I'm getting comments. No questions so far. Frank, are you seeing any questions?
Yeah, I'd like to ask a question.
Oh,
Yeah, go ahead,
one.
Simon.
Hi, how are you? Thank you very much for that. Very interesting, very informative. A lot resonated. So I'm the one that put the comment on about the fact that many people that find themselves as CEOs and co-founders can find themselves on the neurodivergent spectrum.
Yes.
And I recently found out that I am, which explains to me a lot about some of the challenges that I've faced in life. And actually, I try and see it as a superpower. That sometimes those saboteurs, they get the better of you because you're under stress in one particular area or a reason or what have you. And I've always found that having a positive outlook tends to manage to get me through it, but it does take its toll on you, like from an emotional energy perspective, etc. So I just wondered if there was, it's easy to say change your mindset, and maybe some of us would like to join your program, but might not be able to afford it at the moment, perhaps, or don't have the time, or what have you. What one or two things might you suggest to help us kind of take control of those situations?
Yes, no, thank you for saying that, Simon. So the sage steps I talked about, those are going to actually help you in that situation. So let me give you an example of that, a sage step. Are you ready?
Yeah, I am.
All right. So gently close your eyes. Let's take a few deep breaths just to get centered. Now gently rub your thumb and forefinger together. Feel those fingerprints on both fingers. Keep your full focus there. Okay, now gently rub both the palms of your hands together. Feel those sensations in both palms. Okay, now put your left hand on your stomach and feel that gentle rise and fall with each breath. Okay, and gently open your eyes. So just by doing that, Simon, you have weakened your saboteurs, just ever so slightly, and strengthen your sage. Just doing that every few hours will actually keep you more and more in sage mode. doing this consistently for a few weeks, my gosh, that's going to take you to a whole new level. Okay. So just
it's
one
like
simple example for you.
Form of meditation, perhaps.
Yeah, it's a micro meditation. You can think of it that way. Yeah.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Thank you for asking. Yes. Hopefully some of you felt that calmness right away, right? Just by doing 30 seconds. That's how powerful these are. See some more comments. Thank you. Appreciate those wonderful comments. Appreciate it. Any other questions? Okay, looks like there's no more questions. So I thank you for joining today. I hope this was worthwhile. And I look forward to hearing more from you and look forward to staying in touch. Okay.
Thank
Have
you.
a
That was
wonderful day.
fantastic.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.